Welcome back to Jennifer Broussard Art. Today we're capturing history as we paint the original torch from the Statue of Liberty, now housed in a museum. Get ready to explore those beautiful weathered textures and glowy coppery tones. Let's dive in. I'm using my Be Creative 100% cotton journal in size 8.5 by 11. I have my design traced out, and I am now wetting the whole inside of the flame. Use clear water, and then start dropping in some yellows. Look closely at the reference photo and see where the yellows are brighter and where they are darker. Just paint right over the brown overlay. Here I've mixed in a little bit of quinacridone gold. I'm making sure to leave some of the paper white. More quinacridone gold. You could use any yellows that you have in your palette. It does not have to be exactly what I'm using. Now I'm getting a darker value of quinacridone gold and adding a little bit of transparent brown oxide. You could use burnt sienna, quinacridone burnt orange. Here I'm wet on dry. I am filling in the base, the handle for the torch. And then I'm adding in a darker value, probably some burnt umber. Getting some cobalt teal blue and skipping down to the bottom while the other part dries. I'm trying to keep this loose and spontaneous, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on a lot of different techniques. I'm just going to pretty much focus on the values. I'm getting some more cobalt teal blue, and I've added some green. I used some perylene green. The left-hand side of the torch is in shadow, so I am going to make the left-hand side darker than the right-hand side. Again, I'm just filling in shapes. I'm not paying special attention to any curlicues or any intricate details. If you squint your eyes when you're looking at the reference photo, you'll be able to see the values more clearly. The cobalt teal blue in this area is still damp, so I am working wet and wet and easing that darker green over and adding a little detail right there just to suggest that it's there. Still mixing up some of this same color. It's okay if your mixes come out a little different each time. I think that just adds interest to the painting. I am being careful to leave a little bit of light showing through this design. Over there on the left, you'll see some tiny little triangles, and they will remain open. So these two that I'm working on, these upside down heart shapes, are in front of the torch's handle. And so the background of these will be the same color as the handle. And now here on this one that I'm working on now is in the light. And so I'm using more of the blue than the green. with a little triangle. Okay, I'm leaving that detailed part to dry while I come and work on the base. That's some indigo that I just added to the cobalt teal blue. More indigo and some more perylene green. I'm starting to really darken up this left side. More indigo. Now this area right here is still a little damp. So if yours is too dry, let it dry all the way and then wet it again so that you can get a soft transition in the middle of this intricate part. These are little leaf motifs that I'm painting in at the top. That's a leaf, that's a leaf. At least they look like leaves. And on some of them, the left-hand side is dark. Some of them have a highlight. Again, I'm just quickly filling in and just trying to make sure that I leave the highlights. You might be wondering why I didn't just start with indigo on the left-hand side. Well, that's because I want some of the green to peek out of the indigo and the dark values. I want there to be some unity between the two sides of the torch. So that's why you start with layers. And as you add layers, you can leave one layer showing in certain areas and cover it in other areas. Okay, getting some more brown, adding in some yellow ochre, and I'm filling in behind the motif. I didn't do that in the first place because it was a little difficult in my mind to separate out the details of the green from the background. That was some sepia. Now I'm darkening down this torch handle, but being careful of those highlights on the leaf motifs. More sepia. Here I am mixing up some colors for the flame. You can see if you look really closely on the reference photo that there is some green patina in the area that has the light. So this metal part that I'm painting around the light that we painted first. And this is a mixture of cobalt teal blue and sap green. Now I'm adding on some burnt umber. And I'm going over some of the green that I put on. And I'm paying attention to the values of the brown too. I want the brighter part of the light to have a lighter value of brown, and also consider that there's light shining on this light. So it's a little tricky, but just stay close to your reference photo and do your best. Here I mixed some transparent brown oxide and some sepia. And I'm using that dark value on the left. I just added a little bit of quinacridone gold to the mix. Okay, now the whole grid is painted on, and now I'm going to attempt to use value to give this flame some shape, some dimension. And we'll do that by using dark and light values in strategic places. Now the grid is all done, I'm going to let it dry, and I'm going to use the Rosemary Co Small Eradicator to lift out the railing that is around the torch. And I'm just using the pigment that I scrape off to add it to the outside. And I'm basically painting with the Eradicator brush here, which I hadn't done before. And I will be doing this more often. I'm wetting the background, just part of it, this upper part of the page, and I've mixed up some indigo and some sepia and some transparent brown oxide, and I am varying what colors I put on. Wetting the background will help give you time to move the paint around without it drying on you. I didn't mind the streaky background on this particular piece, because it's in a sketchbook, and I was doing this for fun and just decided to record it. I really liked how it came out, so that's why I'm doing this video. But to not get a streaky background is another subject for another video. I thought that the streaky background in this gave a suggestion that there is something in the background. Maybe not sky, but maybe the walls of the museum at night, just stuff reflecting off the light of the torch. Now wetting again while it is still wet. I'm just taking that water and bringing it back down. Here I've added some light red. I'm really liking the variation in the color in the background. I think it really gives it a moody feel. And then when you're doing the part below the railing, so this is all behind the railing, you want to make it match up a little bit to the value and color above the railing. Switch down to, I think, a number 6. I had been using a 10. Okay, same idea down here. There is some stuff in the background hanging on the wall, and I'm just varying the colors. I'm not really paying attention to what it is back there, but, and now I see that my torch didn't come all the way down, all the way over to the right here. That's okay. This is what sketchbooks are for. This is what you use to learn from. Experimenting and seeing what happens. Deepening the value of this little bit of detail. And now I'm just darkening a little bit of some of the detail that's in this motif. Maybe giving it a little bit of shadow so that some of it looks like it's raised so that it isn't so flat. So if I wanted to, I could use this painting as a study for another painting that I really wanted to have up in my house or as a nice painting to have. Okay, now here I am using a 3/4 inch flat. It's a Princeton Neptune. And I wanted that area up there to be darker. I wanted more contrast between the background and the light. I added a little purple, more indigo. Using a little bit bigger brush and a flat brush gets that paint on there a little quicker and a little more evenly. Again, I didn't want to lose the streakiness. And here I am just using a dry brush to, I don't know, spread it all out. And the dry brush goes down to the bottom of the painting. So we go from a very dark over on the left to lighter down at the bottom. And here I'm using the Eradicator brush now to get out some highlights. And I'm going to be scrubbing out some of the brown where there are brighter lights showing through. This will also help give it more dimension. If you don't have an Eradicator brush, you can use like a 1/4 inch flat synthetic brush. You could cut off some of the bristles so it isn't very long. And now I'm increasing contrast by adding more value to the darker values that I already see, just deepening them. And I think I'm using a number 2. Could be a number 4. The important thing is to just have the values varied. Some dark, some light. It doesn't have to be precise, but you really should have some different values of the yellows and of the browns. And now here I'm using some, I think that's quinacridone gold, to bring some more brightness to some of the little boxes. More water. You can see how the indigo that I just added to the background is dried, and it's quite a bit lighter. Okay, now a very dark brown. I think I've added some sepia to the petal. Now this flame is bent, and the light coming in from the window to the right isn't hitting that dark area, so I am darkening it as a shadow. And that's why the yellow squares are a little bit darker there too. Great job, everyone! You've captured a piece of history with your own beautiful rendition of the Statue of Liberty's original torch. I hope you enjoyed playing with those rich coppery hues and subtle textures. Don't forget to share your finished artwork, and I'll see you next time.